Alright guys, chess in the 21st century. We're going to be watching a game from what was one of the strongest events that recently finished and in which the US did really good. The Olympiad. The Olympiad in Baku. This was a game in the match between Russia and Ukraine, and the game is between Grischuk as white and Volokitin as black. Do you guys know who won that match, by the way? Ukraine. Big surprise. They were the clear underdog. In this game also, Volokitin was more than 100 points the underdog, facing Grischuk and as black. But let's see what happened in the game. So Grischuk opened up with f3. A little bit of a background, theoretical background. They are both Grunfeld players. Do you guys know the Grunfeld?
Yeah.
Right. So the Grunfeld goes after d4, knight f6, c4, knight c3, and then d5. Both of them very, very strong Grunfeld players, top theoreticians. So from my experience, I'm a Grunfeld player as well, and I hate playing against the Grunfeld. So I would assume this is what Grischuk also felt, and that's why he tried to kind of avoid that in the first place. So he played knight f3, first move, knight f6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7. The Reti, right? A very, very flexible opening that's kind of becoming more and more common at top level. So here he played the move c4, c6. What is black kind of aiming for? He's aiming to play d5 whenever white plays d4. Also, for example, what happens if you just simply play castle in this position? If you play d4, I'm going to play c6, and next move is going to be d5. But right, very, very good. So you always have to be careful in the opening, because you might be getting tricked if you don't pay a lot of attention. Knight c3 right now supports e4, and if you don't play d5, then I'm going to play e4. For example, if you play c6, I play e4, and I'm getting something that black didn't want, and that is a King's Indian structure. Yeah, he didn't want that. So for this reason, immediately after c4, he played the move c6. b3. Okay, so now let's try to put ourselves in black's shoes. You want to get some sort of Grunfeld type of structure, yeah? But the problem is that white is trying to play a certain type of positions. And that is what? Yes, but more importantly, he wants to keep this pawn where? On d3 most probably, yeah? He wants to play bishop b2, castle, d3, and kind of have this this type of quiet, flexible approach to the position. Black obviously tried to avoid that, and he wants to enter his main lines in the Grunfeld. So yeah, for example, if you play castle, I'm simply going to go bishop g2, castle, and then I'm never going to be forced to play d4. So this is a victory for white, a moral victory. Obviously, the game is still going to go on. White didn't achieve any sort of extraordinary advantage, but psychologically, I would assume this is what white wanted, and black tried to avoid at all costs. So after b3, let's try to find a move that would steer the game into our hands. Knight e4, exactly. And this is exactly what Volokitin played. So once again, a very, very small little nuance that if you don't catch it, you might be facing the type of games that you don't want to allow your opponent to have. So Knight e4, d4, d5, castle, castle, and this is exactly what a lot of Grunfeld players play against the g3 Grunfeld, right? They play c6, d5, and they get this pawn structure similar to what opening? Slav, obviously. So bishop b2, bishop f5, normal moves, knight d2. What would you play in this position? What could white's idea be? Like, let's say you play a normal developing move, knight to d7. Did white have a threat in the position? Knight h4, exactly. And I think right now you're going to be losing the bishop pair by force, or you're going to give away your center. So after knight h4, knight d2, queen takes d2. Bishop e4 doesn't work because of f3. If you go bishop f4, f3, and then you still have to go bishop f5, then I take your bishop pair, and I have a very nice position. And if you go something like bishop e6, now I can simply defend my c4 pawn. And next move is what? First of all, this bishop on e6 is not very active, and if you will let me, I will play e4. So these are not the type of positions that black was willing to accept. So he played a different move in this position. Try to create some problems for white. What is maybe one of the easiest way to stop knight h4? Okay, bishop f6 is an interesting move, but you very rarely going to play it. The bishop on g7 is perfectly placed. If you play bishop h6, for once, I might even be able to play knight h4. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you want, because the dark square bishop is probably your best piece in the position. Despite the fact that you broke my structure, now I'm actually going to attack you with h5, and if I manage to open the center and open this bishop, then you can probably resign. So it's a very dangerous trade you're making. Bishop f6 is not a natural move. Usually chess is played by natural moves. Okay. We don't want to protect. No, please. No, thanks. Okay. C5, I think unfortunately you're a little bit behind in development, and I don't think c5 actually works. For example, if you play c5, I think I can simply take on d5. Now if you take with the queen, I think you might be losing a piece. And if you take on d4, I'm going to take with the knight. C5 is an interesting idea, but you have to be very careful about the timing. If your timing is not right, then it's going to simply be a blunder. No. A move that kind of helps your development as well. queen to a5, absolutely. And this queen a5 is especially aimed against the structure with the pawn on b3, because now, as you see, there are a lot of dark squares on the queen side that this queen on a5 is actually going to control. So yeah, queen a5 is a very natural, very nice continuation for black. e3. Now I have a question for you, and if you are at home, you can just stop the video and test yourself. Is knight c3 a good move? If you said no, then you also have to elaborate a little bit. It does seem like a very appealing move, to be honest, because if you take on c3 with the bishop, then I simply take back with the queen, and getting your bishop pair is definitely something that I would like to have. The problem with knight c3 is a little bit different. Now, after knight c3, does queen c1 work? No, because of the fork on e2, right? Knight e2, and you lose the queen. So maybe then what's the only other option? Queen e1. But what's the problem with queen e1? All right. So just to make it a little bit more difficult for you guys, let's take it from here, because this is where black has to make the decision whether he wants to play knight c3 or not. If you play knight c3, you cannot take it back. Let's try to calculate. Knight c3, queen e1, bishop to d3. How is that position? Is black winning? Exactly. Knight to b1. Knight e2, king h1. We're going to exchange the queens, but then your knight is going to be trapped on a2. So this is the big problem that you cannot really miss as black, right? Because then you're almost lost. I mean, you can take on f1, but after taking on c3, you move the queen, I take back on f1. 2 pieces for a rook and no other compensation for that is pretty bad, right? So black is, I would say, practically losing here. And if you play knight e2, I simply go king h1, and after queen takes c1, rook takes c1, this is going to be lost. So Volokitin, being a pretty good tactician, he didn't fall for knight c3. He played a normal developing move, knight d7. Queen e2, rook to e8. What's the point of rook e8? To play e5 in the future, yeah? This could always, e5 could always be an interesting way to simplify the position and kind of get rid of all your opening problems. Knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and what is a very common idea whenever the bishop is on e4 and we have this fianchetto bishop? Bishop to h3, absolutely. Basically you're taking your bishop off the diagonal, and then you're preparing what move? Knight to d2, attacking the e4 bishop. You get rid of the light square bishop, and then if you manage to get the bishop pair, you're going to have a very nice advantage. Now, this is the critical moment of the game, guys. Let's let's try to find out what the candidate moves are, and what is black's What are black's best options? The problem with knight c5 is that I'm simply going to play a very natural move such as rook d1, maybe? Because you're threatening bishop d3, right? This is the point. Now, Doug's idea, if you take on c5, maybe take on f3, maybe take on b2. Whoa. So after knight c5, yeah, the problem with knight c5, it's not d takes c5 one more time, because d takes c5, bishop takes f3, or bishop takes b2, and then you will regain your piece with dividends. But after rook fd1, I'm not really sure where this knight is going. So you always have to be careful. You can make this type of nice looking moves, yeah, tricky moves, but you always have to be careful about very simple defenses. So I think after rook fd1, maybe black should be doing quite well, yeah? I agree. Go back. Or maybe not. Wait. Maybe not. What if you just take now? You see, you guys shouldn't believe me every time.
So b takes.
B takes, and now the knight has an objective. He's going to go to a4, and maybe knight c5 was a brilliancy. That is correct. That is correct. Or, let's see.
It's tricky.
It's definitely a tricky move. Now the question is, do we have any alternatives? You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking.
You do have bishop takes f3 and then knight d3.
We're in what position?
Oh, I see.
No, after d takes c5, just take on f3. Okay. I think I have an idea. Try to reinforce your threat of taking on c5. 91, exactly. And in the same time, you're defending against bishop takes d3, bishop d3, and in the same time, you're also preparing for f3 and catching the bishop. So right now, if he goes back to e6 or to a6, well, to e6 is actually much worse, because if he goes to e6, then f3, and I think after g4 you might be losing something. Maybe not, because of knight g5. So I don't even have to do that. I can just simply take, and then your pawn is going to be very weak on f5. So knight c5, very interesting try, but knight e1 probably refutes it. We're going to eliminate that candidate move. What is the most natural move in the position? Knight f6, I go knight d2. Knight f6, I go knight d2, and I get what I want. I get the bishop pair.
E5 is
e5?
No,
The knight is hanging.
Oh, sorry.
The knight is hanging.
somewhere. Knight f8.
To be honest, I think rook d8 is probably the most natural move. But the problem is that, yeah, I'm going to take knight d2, and the computer actually likes black, as in he thinks it's around equal, but I still think white has the much more pleasant game. So maybe instead of rook a d8, maybe we could try to find a better alternative.
What about bishop f5?
Bishop f5, I'm going to take that guy on f5, and then you're going to have a bad structure. That's definitely, what? The e4 square is kind of already yours, at least for the moment. But no, after bishop f5, I'm going to take. Your king is very weak. I mean, why would you allow that? This is a very symmetrical structure. if you give white the slightest of advantage, he's going to take good care of it, and he's going to be very happy. So black is trying to avoid that at all costs. And you guys already mentioned the right move. One of you. I'm not going to say who.
6
F5, I go knight d2, and actually I'm threatening to go f3 to catch your bishop. You might be in trouble. Somebody tell me the the extra option that we have. D takes c4. Okay. You said it first. Now he said it. So yes, that's what I said. So why did you guys eliminate it so fast?
Because it loses a piece, but it doesn't.
Because of bishop takes d7. Now the question is, does black have any continuation after that?
Queen d5.
Well, queen h5, g4.
There we go. We're starting to go to get on the right track. D takes c4, bishop takes d7. Now, and d takes if c4 is actually the right move. I'm not going to make you calculate the whole thing because not even Grischuk managed to calculate it. So
Can we try? Please.
only the people at home watching the video can stop the video and try to calculate everything, but that would be a bit torturous for you guys. So I'm trying to be nice tonight. Bishop takes d7, queen to h5. Now, what are the options?
Don't you have to pick?
Nope, you definitely don't have to.
All right.
You have another option which actually looks like the right one, to be honest. No, bishop e8 just loses on the spot. After a bishop takes f3 and then you move your queen, I go queen h3, I checkmate you. Is that enough material? No, definitely not. No, the two options are obviously g4, or maybe there's a way to save the piece. King to g2. What's the problem with king g2? And for the record, I believe this is what Grischuk kind of missed in the first place when he allowed to black to play d takes c4. So what's the problem with king g2, guys? Rook e to d8, let's say. Let's assume rook e to d8. Let's go with the most natural kind of line. Yeah, rook e to d8. What does white do? Bishop goes to h3, right? That's kind of the point of king g2. Now the question is, does black have a continuation there? To maybe try to exert some more pressure on white's position? So king g2, rook d8, bishop to h3. G5 was actually a pretty nice move. After g4, you have to be a little bit careful. Where are you going to put your queen? Paralyze his position to the maximum. Where will you keep your queen? Queen h4, very nice. Because I think after queen h6, if you just play a normal move like this, I can go knight king g3, right? And then maybe bishop g2, and maybe I manage to escape somehow, right? But if you put a queen on h4, now I simply don't have any moves. And what is your next move? Which one? Rook d6, rook h6, or Why not h5? h5, h takes g4. You're having a very nice position with black. So g5 is one way. Another way is just simply play rook d6, rook swing to f6, and then you're having quite some difficulties defending that f3 knight. So obviously Grischuk understood that, and he played the right move in this position, which is g4. Go on. Queen goes to h3, absolutely. Try to find a way to maybe try to still gain that piece. Knight e1 is an interesting question you're posing, which is probably which is what Grischuk played. Does that keeps the piece alive or not? Yes.
Never mind.
What were you thinking?
My move idea was bad.
Knight g5 maybe?
Yeah, that's
Right, but that allows queen g2 checkmate, right? But that's a good idea to understand why it's not good. So knight goes to e1. Rook d8, I go f3, and maybe I can keep the piece alive, no? Well, let's see what he did. He played bishop d3 first. Did any one of you think about this move? What is the point of it? So he forces you to like exchange, and now you're going to play what? Options, guys, options. There's more than one option in this position. There is rook e d8, which is kind of the obvious move. But there's also what Volokitin played, and that is given the match situation, he is black. Usually, if you manage to make a draw as black, especially with a guy that is 100 points higher rated than you are, it's viewed that result is viewed as a success. So he played rook a to d8. Now, obviously, if Grischuk plays bishop takes c8, after queen takes g4, king h1, queen f3, this is a draw, yeah, perpetual. But Grischuk decides to take on c6 and plays bishop takes c6. Now, what could one difference be having your A rook on d8 and not the rook from e to d8? Yes, exactly. The break in the center with e5 is going to be supported, and after bishop c6, black is going to be a pawn down, right? So what does he need to look for? Compensation, initiative, however you want to call it. Somehow we're going to try to stop white from stabilizing the position. Yeah, if white manages to stabilize the position, then he's simply going to be a pawn up, and that's going to be problematic for us. But e5 is definitely an idea that we need to keep on the board. Bishop takes c6, b takes c6, queen goes to e4, and it seems as if white stabilized the position. How would you continue if you were black? If e5, I think I can just simply take. Rook d2, then I put my bishop on c3. It might be okay. So he played c5, right? Rook a to d1. What now? Again, try to play powerful moves. This is what you need to do to maintain the initiative. If you lose it, once again, he's going to be a pawn up, and you're going to have problems equalizing. And this is probably what Grischuk kind of believed he can do. But obviously, Black has a different plan in mind. h5. G takes f5, G takes h5, Queen takes h5, and right now after the disappearance of the G pawn, the White king is always going to be in trouble, right? Coupled with the fact that you have some sort of pressure on the center, Black's position is perfectly fine. f4, which is a pretty bad move, and I'm not really sure what Grischuk missed. What is one problem with f4? He's trying to stop trying to stop Black from playing e5, but Queen e2. Yeah, exactly. Queen to e2. All right. What should we do now? What are the options? I'm not asking you to calculate all the way to the end, but maybe give me some options. Bishop a3 is one. The problem with bishop a3 is that I think I'm just going to take on d4, either with the pawn, either with the bishop, and I think you might have some problems after that. The bishop on a3 is not necessarily very well placed. But knowing Grischuk, I would assume he was already starting to feel the time pressure. He's a time pressure addict. He actually enjoys it.
Is there another option that doesn't lose material?
Well, that's the question. Maybe at this point, if we play normal moves, we're simply just going to have a worse position. Maybe we have to start looking for ways to equalize by force. Yeah, f5. f5 would have been probably one of the best moves in the position. I think the computer likes bishop c1, but bishop c1 just looks so unnatural to me. I would never even consider this move, to be honest. I think the point of the computer is bishop c1, c takes d4, and then to go rook d2. That was the whole point of bishop c1, just support rook d2, but it's just such a non-natural way of playing chess that, yeah, Grischuk didn't even think about it, I would assume. f5 would have been very, very good. Now, if you take on b2 after f takes g6, I don't think you can defend against perpetual. For example, if you play something like this, rook f1, queen h7, and the game complicates. The game becomes very, very complicated. I think white is doing perfectly fine here. Okay? So this is one thing that you guys should be trying to look for. Complications whenever you feel you're being pressured. Don't give your opponent an easy game. He played bishop a1. C takes d4. Rook d1. What now? Queen g4, queen g2. What did Grischuk calculate in this position? What did he calculate and what did he miss? What is the normal variation in this position? The most forced variation in this position. Queen takes g2. Go on. Speak louder. So queen takes g2, king takes g2, d takes e3. Well, I don't think rook takes e3 is actually the most natural way. I think bishop takes g7, king takes g7, rook takes e3, rook d2, rook f2, draw. Let's just put it on the board so that everybody can see. Now we're getting somewhere. So this is a draw, yeah? Equal pawns. There's no reason why black would be better. Now the question is, after queen g2, where's the mistake along that line? What did Grischuk miss? Queen takes g2, king takes g2, d takes e3, bishop takes g7, rook d2 check. Exactly. And that intermezzo check, it doesn't allow rook f2 anymore, right? And that's exactly what happened. Well, that would have happened if Grischuk would have chose to take on g7. After bishop takes g7, we're not going to take on g7. We're going to play rook d2, king f3, well, or king g3, king takes g7, and you're going to lose one of the pawns, right? Probably not both. Just one of them is enough. And rook e2, would you take on e2? No. Definitely not. You would just improve the position, maybe something like rook h8. Black is almost winning. So Grischuk played rook e2, bishop takes a1, e5. Once again, you see why that rook on e8 is playing a very, very important role. F takes e5, rook takes e5, rook e1, king g7. The thing is that white is not really threatening to take on e3 because of rook d2, king g3. Ideas? Sometimes simple moves are enough. So he played rook e8, h3. What's the problem with this move? Rook f5, king g3. No, I think actually rook h8 would have been quite difficult for white to handle, because right now again you cannot take on e3. I would take with the rook and then take on h2, and black is almost winning. If you go king g3, I can even play rook g6 here. Rook h5, rook h3. Game is over, yeah? Or very close to very close to being over. So he played h3 with the idea to defend that pawn with maybe rook h1 in the future. f5, king f3. What now? Be precise. It's probably, there might be more than one way of winning this endgame, but rook h8 is definitely the most precise one. King g3. What now?
G5.
Exactly. g5. Rook h2. f4. King f3. King f6. Rook c1. King f5, and Grischuk, being a nice guy, he resigned. Well, I don't know, a nice guy. He was probably very annoyed by this moment, losing as white on the Russian team in a team competition. That's terrible. Putin is going to call you and tell you that you're probably going to be, huh?
Especially against the Ukraine.
Especially against Ukraine, you can understand that Grischuk probably had a pretty rough night after this game. Okay, that was chess in the 21st century. Thank you guys.